Mary, and like I said, she's from New Orleans, and her husband and her have an adopted daughter. She's a Creighton practitioner. She's also the founder of Taking Back the Terms. She's a speaker. She's co-founded Fab M Base, a
Fan
new
base.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Fan base.
Oh,
it is a little
base.
tricky to pronounce. Yeah.
Oh, yes, thank you. I was wondering about that. Fan base, it's a new, and hopefully you can share more about that with us, Mary.
Sure.
It's a new nonprofit organization, and she's currently writing her first book on infertility and suffering as well. So welcome, Mary. Thank you.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy also that you put all of this stuff together. It's so awesome. And I can't wait to see what everybody has to say and everything.
Yes.
So yeah, do you want me to just get started with my story, or?
Yeah, let's go ahead and let's just get started. For those that are maybe unfamiliar with Mary, why don't you just share a little bit of your story to kind of give some context to what we'll be talking about today?
Yeah. Okay, so like she said, I've been married to my husband for 8 years now. We've never been pregnant. And in order to kind of explain my infertility journey, I've got to kind of explain a little bit about my cycle journey as well. So I started my period when I was about 13 years old. I actually had some cramps before my first period ever started. And then as it started and years continued to pass, it became more painful and more heavy. It wasn't until I was about 24 years old that I was finally diagnosed with endometriosis, which is a very common disease, but is known for being diagnosed very late. And it's also known for causing a lot of pain and also infertility in a lot of women. So I was diagnosed with endometriosis about 7 months or so after my now husband started dating. So still kind of early on, but we were pretty serious. And then I had my first of 12 surgeries right after that. And so infertility for me has been very much a spiritual and emotional, difficult journey, but it's also been very physically painful one. So we got married, let's see, about 2 years after that. And going into marriage, I really didn't think I'd have an issue getting pregnant. Like, don't we kind of do that? We just expect to have children, right? We don't really expect to be infertile. Even though I had this diagnosis staring me in the face, I really didn't think I'd have an issue having children, which made it that much more difficult. So we got married and obviously nothing happened. We continued to try. I continued to have some surgeries, still nothing happened. And about 2 years into it was when it became the worst for me. I ended up having a false positive pregnancy test, which I didn't know was possible, but I had a faint line on there, and I had to wait for the confirmation of a blood test, right? So I was kind of keeping my hopes guarded, but I had never had one of those before.
Yeah.
So it took about a day, and I got the call to confirm that I actually didn't have a baby in my belly. And that was when I hit rock bottom and everything changed. So I got real upset with God. I really questioned my faith on that day. I really questioned the existence of God, because I had gone through all of this stuff and I couldn't even get the assurance of a negative pregnancy test. Like, the roller coaster ride of infertility isn't enough. And then it was like this steep drop that I wasn't expecting. So we had like a serious powwow that day, me and God, Are you there? Because I didn't feel his comfort. I didn't feel his presence. I didn't feel anything. And I kind of felt him put a subtle message on my heart. And it was, do you love me? And I had to take an honest look at myself, because we say that all the time, right? Like, yeah, I love Jesus, this and that. But it was like right here, when I wasn't getting the thing I so desperately wanted, what was the decision that I was going to make? And that was really when I decided I needed to choose him, whether I got what I wanted or not. And that was so hard. So going forth, that was the biggest change for me that day, is making the decision daily to love God, to love myself, to love my spouse, to love others, whether I got what I was really asking for or not. And that's when everything changed. I really had to, again, it's a decision we make every day. It's not a decision that we can make just once and everything is fine. over the next several years, it was a very painful journey. But it was really discovering who I was. And that's when and seeing who God really created me to be. That was the biggest thing, because here I didn't have this thing I so desperately wanted. But as I started to move forward and really dig into my suffering, that's when I started to discover all these gifts God had given me that I didn't even know were there, because I wasn't paying attention to them. I was so set on this one goal of achieving a pregnancy. God had all this other stuff that he was just dying to show me. And that is where I really found the joy in discovering like the talents and gifts God had given me from that point on. So that's when first thing we did was adopted a little girl. Now, not every infertile couple is called to adopt, but that was certainly something that God called us to do. And then so many other gifts that I started to discover. I started taking back the terms, which is my outreach, where again, I had such a late diagnosis, and it was because of lack of understanding of women's health care and fertility awareness based methods, which had I known how my reproductive system functioned worked sooner, had I been aware of what wasn't normal sooner, I could have gotten treated and diagnosed a lot sooner. And then from there, I needed to find something to release my emotions and like really get all my thoughts and feelings down. So I started writing. I had no idea I had this gift and passion for writing. So I started blogging. I actually started rapping too. I have always loved rap music. I know it doesn't really look like it, but actually like rapping really helped me to process these emotions. And so that was really huge. I started podcasts.
Maybe you can share one with us when we get done with our session. Would you want to do that?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I wasn't prepared for that. But yeah, maybe so. I'm open. Let's see where the spirit leads.
Yeah, let's see where this goes.
Yeah. I have some recorded, so you guys can go find that too. But I have a lot more to record. But yeah, no, that's really been awesome for me. I started podcasting. Then I started writing a book, and then I became a Creighton practitioner and started fan base. Like when giving God my trust and really saying like, use this suffering in me, everything started to grow. Like the fruit really started, just really started to see how fruitful I was, even though I'm unable to bear children. And that's been really huge for me.
Wow. There's so much that you said in there that I'd love to dig in further a little bit deeper with that. So let's maybe start with the part where you said it was kind of 2 years in. That's kind of where you hit rock bottom. And would you say that was kind of like, we all have a timeline in life, right?
Yeah.
We all have points where, okay, you graduate high school, graduate college, whatever it is. We all have different ones. Maybe you traveled someplace that you wanted to go, or bought a certain house or something like that. So would you say at that 2 year point, that rock bottom, was that kind of a line on your timeline where you could say, yep, this was me before and this was me after?
Well, my expectations all changed before marriage when I got that diagnosis. Like my husband and I guess you actually could say, I never really realized that we had discussed, like before I was diagnosed, we'll wait about 2 years, give ourselves time to settle into marriage. We waited to move in together till we were married and introduce sex until after we were married. So we needed time to be able to really settle into those new roles. So I guess that was there without me even realizing it. And then everything changed with the diagnosis because we didn't know. I didn't expect that I would have trouble getting pregnant. But considering the diagnosis, it was like, well, we really can't play around with this. So I don't know if I have time. I don't know how much time we have left. We actually moved our wedding up a few months so that we could start trying right away.
Oh, wow.
So I would say, and typically people get pregnant within the first 6 months or a year. So by the time 2 years hit, I was like, okay, I've had enough. I just had enough.
Yeah, definitely. And was that, you kind of had shared with that too, that there was you had this conversation, right? About you weren't getting what you wanted, right? And I think that is a big piece of this journey, right? Where we do have expectation. We all have expectations on ourselves or our timeline, and what we want for life. And that's healthy. That's a healthy part.
Absolutely.
But when it becomes a longer process, it really wears really wears a person down, right? You lose hope, you lose faith, you lose trust, you lose a lot along the way, because you're not getting that positive or physical reaffirmation of what
Yes.
you're looking for. So what would you say then, you know, what can we do that for that daily decision? What are those conversations we can have with ourselves, to have that daily decision of okay, that kind of acceptance part where okay, it's another day, I'm still not pregnant. What conversation can we encourage people to have with themselves to keep going another day, to keep going another day, to keep building maybe that confidence, that faith, that hope along the journey?
It's funny you say that because I actually remember myself having those exact conversations. I would be in the shower. Why do so many moments like that happen in the shower? You know, like we have all these moments of wisdom. But I think it's interesting too because we have these expectations, right? Most of us, especially if we're women of faith, we know or we really believe God can't allow us to get pregnant at any time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so troubling to say, why haven't you allowed this? I know that you can. You have this power.
Yes,
Why
yes.
not?
Mm-hmm.
And that made me so angry for a while. But then I saw it as an invitation to say, okay, because I know that you can do this and you have chosen not to for whatever reason at this moment in my life, what are you trying to show me?
Mm-hmm.
There is something else. If you don't want me to be pregnant, right? Or I don't want to say if you don't want me, I don't like that language, but if you have not allowed it to happen, it's because you have something very important, something else that is very important and just as beautiful for me to discover and learn about myself or someone else or just like my purpose in this world. So I remember one day in the shower, I that is exactly how it happened. I said, okay, I accept this today. I accept that you have not called me to this today. I'm gonna try again tomorrow, but please make use of me in another way. I mean, we just want to be used, right? Like we want to have purpose.
Yes.
And having a child is a beautiful purpose. It's an amazing purpose. But it's not our only purpose. Even women who have children, they have a lot of other beautiful, amazing purposes. And I just want to add too that for me, I mean, I'm not able to have children right now. As far as I know, there's no indication that I will be able to have children, but it doesn't mean I'm any less important or valuable than those other women who can. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, it was finding use, like God, make use of me. And when and stepping into that suffering and that pain and really digging into that. And that is what has been so illuminating for me. And two, I want to say, like, as far as acceptance goes, we can be accepting. Again, this is a decision we make daily, but it doesn't mean that we're going to be completely free of pain. Like we can still experience the pain. Like the pain is an acknowledgement that something really beautiful is not there. Like that is a loss that we do have to accept, but it does not mean we cannot be joyful. It does not mean that we can not have peace. Those can coexist. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we can still appreciate that pain and accept where we are.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's kind of the I'll speak for myself, was hard was that acceptance part where I thought it would be void of pain,
Yeah.
sadness, disappointment. I thought it would be void. I didn't realize they could coexist. I'm a very
Right.
black and white person, so it
Yeah.
just didn't make sense to me logically that I could be holding on to both of them. And so, yeah, I think, you know, kind of talking into that acceptance piece, there's that part where, like you had said, you know, I'm not okay with this. I don't want this. I'm not happy about it. But how can you still, like you said, I think, you know, how can you still use me? Please share that purpose with me. So it's kind of a different conversation,
It is.
that we have.
Yeah, and that's what's been so healing for me, honestly, because I'm like, wow, you've actually given me a lot of gifts. Like, and I want to also point out all of the things that I mentioned, I would not have discovered any of them had it not been for infertility.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a challenge. It's a painful challenge God tends to put us through, but we grow. I mean, He gives us the ability to grow so much from those challenges. How many challenges in your own life, whether it's infertility or something else, has made you better? And that's what I've discovered is that, like, yeah, God calls us to do these really hard things a lot, but it's because He has something so much better in store for us, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So my life has become so fulfilled by these other things. And the things I listed, that's just my life. Like, our lives, that's what's so beautiful, that we're all made so uniquely. I mean, the things that I've discovered in myself are going to be different than somebody else, and it doesn't have to be big. It can be small. It can be as little as growing in empathy. I mean, I noticed that at first too, is how much I had grown in empathy, because I never experienced such incredible emotional suffering, that it really helped me to connect with other people and be more patient with them, really dig into their suffering too, because it means so much when somebody sees me in
Mhm.
that place,
Yep.
to really enter into that for other people as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and so what would you say to those kind of watching today? What ways can we encourage them, or can you encourage them that they are able to kind of sit down and maybe evaluate that growth? Like, what could that process look like for them? Or like you had said, you've learned all these gifts that you never had, or maybe you would have never tapped into. Um, and how can they do that? How can those watching today, what can they do to sit back and be like, all right, what gifts have I been given through this pain?
That's right. Well, it certainly takes time. It's not going to be something that you're going to sit there and it's going to just kind of come to you. But we all, I would say, look back too, like all these things that I started doing, I realized there were kind of things that I ended up doing throughout my life. Like I always loved rap music, for example. I actually did start to write a book when I was in high school, like not in high school, when I started college, like just like writing something down that was important to me. It had nothing to do with infertility, obviously. But it was just something that I never really tapped back into.
Mhm.
And then, I mean, what is your heart calling you to do? We just get so distracted by our desire, like the things that I think with infertility, like it's such an ongoing thing. It's not a tragedy that's final. So
Mhm.
it's always there,
Yep.
and those desires are good to have a baby. Those are good. They should be there. Like, I'm not saying to forget about those. I'm just saying to just kind of look inside of yourself and see what am I learning through this experience? Again,
Mhm.
that's when I was like, okay, God, how can I use this? What am I learning because of this? Really stepping into that suffering and that pain and saying, what is there? What are my desire? What are my other desires calling me to? And it's just that openness over the years. I mean, this all didn't happen for at once for me by any means. It was just he opened it up a little bit more for me, a little bit more for me, um, every month and every year. So being patient, it's so hard, but that's a big part of it too.
Yeah.
And being
Yeah.
grateful for the gifts he has given us too. Like gratitude is huge for me as
Mhm.
well. Being grateful for the and just recognizing those gifts that we do have.
Yeah, yeah, recognizing those. Because, yeah, we probably don't focus on that as much when we're in this journey, right? Like, and I'll speak for myself. Look, I was just focused on the end, right? Like, I was just looking over here. Like, I wasn't looking, where was I and what was in the middle? I was just like, let's just go right
Exactly.
over, you know,
Exactly.
to the end of it. And to kind of talk about what you said about finding those gifts, even for myself, like, it took me 2.5 years to find acceptance. Like, that was my journey of finding acceptance of my experience. And I remember the moment I was in my yard, I was picking sticks, and I was just asking God, I'm like, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do if I'm not getting my heart desire? What do you want me to do? And he showed me. He said, start your blog. I started living the weight at that moment. And like you said, he showed me my gifts too. I didn't really realize it at the time, but it's
Yeah.
exactly what you said. I've always loved writing, so it made sense to do the blogging. Um,
Right.
yeah, it was so cool to like see, like you said, it's almost like he used those gifts and those skills that I've always had, but he repurposed them in a different way, um, to help in a different area of life, that
Yes.
now I had been encountering. And it's the only reason I'm talking to all of you guys today, right? Like,
Right.
he allowed me to find that acceptance. And now I'm talking to Mary in Louisiana and people from Switzerland. Like, and so I think, I hope those watching see that kind of as an encouragement that, when we are able to get to maybe that point of acceptance, which it's a process for everyone, right? Like, we're not all going to get there at the same time.
Absolutely.
Like, so much, he can find so much beauty in you individually, through that. Yeah, it can be so powerful.
And I also want to point out what's so encouraging to me is I discovered like a broader definition of motherhood. We all see motherhood as biological
Oh.
purely, but spiritual motherhood is huge. And that's what you're talking about. Like
Mm.
you are using your gifts and being spiritual mothers to all of the women that are attendees today. And like speaking God's truth, you know, he's speaking through you to all of them, right? That
Yeah.
is being a mother. So like we're mothers to people in so many different ways, because to be a mother is just to nurture, to comfort, to give, to provide, to sacrifice, to educate. I mean, the list goes on. So we
Wow.
are mothers whether we ever give birth or not. And I just wish that was more appreciated in our culture in general, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I never thought about it like that before. You're right. The message so much is just it's very just on this, right? That physical being a mother, birthing
Right.
a child, and wow, yeah, I never thought about it from that other angle. Um, wow, that's really big. Well, we have quite a few questions, Mary, that we've gotten from some of our
Okay.
attendees here today. So let's maybe dive into those, and I'm sure we'll have more conversation that will kind of come up
For sure.
as we're chatting. So one of them, one of the questions, did you have support through this journey, and what did that support look like?
Yeah, great question. So the hardest thing for me has been other women. I mean, to be honest with you, there weren't anybody who understood what I was going through at the time. So my husband was a big place for support. Also, like I think one of two things can happen when you have so much suffering in a marriage, like with the infertility and like pain and anything else, is that it can be very tempting to go away from each other. But fortunately, by the grace of God, my husband and I really grew closer together through the suffering. And I think it's really, really crucial to learn how to suffer well with each other. So he was my biggest support. I ended up reconnecting, actually, interesting enough, with another friend. God was blessed me with one of my best friends, closest friends, also is infertile. And we had kind of had a fight and we weren't speaking at the time. So we didn't know each other was infertile, but she started having surgery, found out I had had surgery, but at the same place. So she texted me and asked me some questions about it. And that ended up reconnecting us. So and then we became best friends again. We had kind of lost touch for several years. And so God knew we needed each other. And thank God. I mean, you really got, if possible, to find someone who really knows what you're dealing with. So, um, but that was really, she was my biggest support system for a really long time.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and it's kind of to tag along to that question, that does require us being willing to at least share that with one other person, right?
Yes.
I mean, oftentimes when you first get that diagnosis, it maybe stays inside, right? Because I think it's hard to accept it. So it's like, if I speak it, that means it's actually happening.
Right.
So if I
True.
keep it inside,
Right. Right.
um, so what's maybe one thing you could encourage people to do to maybe find that support system?
Hmm.
Outside, like you had said, maybe finding someone, because I agree with you. It's very different. Like having friends and family are great to have support, but if they haven't been through it, it's a different kind of support from someone that has been in the trenches and understands.
Right. And just to clarify, like other women who aren't experiencing infertility, like they can be great people for support as well. And I have several of those that are so supportive of my gifts and all those other things. It's just, it's a lot easier to find someone, obviously, when they know what you're going through. It took me a really long time to find this, and it might sound silly, but honestly, Instagram. I mean,
Mm,
because that's when you're going to find those people. I mean, I know you're not maybe going to see them in person, but I have found a great Instagram community who understands infertility,
mhm.
and I've really connected with them. There's a lot of friends that I've connected with over Instagram, because I mean, it's true. We may not have somebody in our area who knows what it's like. Maybe also through church. I mean, not unfortunately, not a lot of churches have like infertility support groups, but I did go to Baton Rouge, which is a couple hours east of here. I'm sorry, west of here, for an infertility workshop where I did make a couple of friends that I did keep in touch with.
Oh, okay.
So if you have things like that nearby, they are kind of hard to find. I do find they're helpful. Also, you don't have to be a blogger to write things down. I find that like getting them out, whichever way, maybe you're an artist, you know, some way to get those emotions out onto something. If you have to beat a stick on a tree or something, like, to get those feelings out, do
Mhm.
it. Do what you got to do, you know?
Yeah. Find the outlet, or kind of see how God's maybe nudging you to find, like you said, maybe it's
Yeah.
writing, maybe it's creating,
He
maybe it's
will,
baking.
and he will not leave you alone. He will bring you to what you need. So without a doubt, he will
Yeah.
bring you what you need.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, he's kind of like that story I shared at the beginning, just that like he wants to be faithful to us, you know,
Yes.
during that time. So,
Yeah.
um, so yeah, no, that's great. So another question we had, Mary, was this one here. So, I'm just going to kind of read through it here. Kind of this concept of acceptance. This person had shared that it just doesn't feel very hopeful, right? So we had talked about, your topic was living with acceptance and the hope it brings. So she's just kind of sharing that it doesn't feel very hopeful to me. It's difficult to feel hopeful or really believe something will be different when I've been trying for a while and have had failed interventions. So this person was sharing too, they would like to get back to a place of more hope, but hope that is grounded in reality, not desperate or anxious. So maybe that more. So what would you kind of share with them about that whole concept of what they kind of were sharing about acceptance and hope?
Well, a couple of things. Again, infertility is not a final tragedy unless you have a hysterectomy or enter into menopause. So you're never really accepting I'll never get pregnant, because you could, you know, most of the time it can happen. So we're kind of in this, I think we always feel like we're in this limbo place. What am I supposed to hope for? And ultimately, I think the challenging place to get to, but what is so beautiful and fruitful, is being okay with the way God has designed us, no matter what that looks like, no
Mm-hmm.
matter what the end goal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is, and really loving ourselves there. And I think that kind of takes care of the other things. Another thing is, I think it's natural to want to run away from this suffering, right? Like we just don't want to feel it. So we
Yep.
do everything in our power to try to take away the suffering. Some of that is just to get pregnant, and some of it, you know, is just, I don't want to think about it. I want to put it in a box. And honestly, even if we do get pregnant, this is what I always told myself, you know, like, I don't want to forget this pain. I think it's so important to not put this pain in a box, but to step into it and to really, again, ask God, what are you trying to show me? What are you trying to make use of in me?
Mm-hmm.
And that way, when we understand that we can be okay no matter what the outcome is, I think that's what's really, really helpful. Um, is and that way, no, see, my experience when what coming from the on this end of infertility and going forward is I've discovered that no matter what life, you know, whatever the curveballs are,
Mm-hmm.
whether it has to do with infertility or something else, because something else is going to come and like
Yes.
and
Yep.
rock my world. But I know the hope that I have now because of what I've gotten through. And that is a matter of really stepping into the suffering, feeling it. I know we don't want to do that all the time. And I'm not saying sit there and become depressed and all that. I'm just saying feel it and bring God into it and say, all right, and be open to what are you trying to do in me, and ask him to help you and to heal you and take that pain away. And I think again that's what's transformative, because we understand that no matter what happens, that God is with us and that we will be okay and that we can find joy no matter what happens. Okay, you know, and that way, if the baby never comes, I mean, it's going to be hard, but we can be okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. And something you said there too about that is kind of that not wasting that weight, right? Like you said,
Yes.
we're kind of in limbo of where we are and where we want to be, and there's this big gap, right? There's just
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
endless space. And so how can we make the most of that time? Like you said, transformation, growth can happen during that time. Like you said,
Absolutely.
it's still going to be painful, right? Like,
Absolutely.
and we're not avoiding that or saying it won't be that way. But
Mhm.
pain, like we said earlier, that pain and that transformation or that growth, they can coexist.
Absolutely.
Which
That
is,
was huge for me. They both can coexist.
yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Definitely. So another one, this one kind of relates to just the infertility label. So this attendee was just saying like, I'm just struggling with that label, right? Like it's the same type of thing where we might have a label of a cancer diagnosis or a divorce, or there's certain labels that maybe get attached to us during life because of experiences.
Yeah.
And this gal was just saying, I'm just having a tough time accepting that label. So
Yeah.
what would you kind of share with them about that?
Well, first, I just want you to know that's okay. Like wherever you are right now is okay. Yourself to be somewhere where you're not ready to be yet.
Mhm.
Um, and for me personally, you're right. Like thinking about infertility over, you don't want to be labeled as infertility, but as someone who is just infertile, like when they look at you, that's what they see. You're the infertile girl coming around, you know?
Yeah.
The way that I look, I just try not to dwell on that too much because infertility has been, I mean, honestly, it's brought me so much. I've come through so much from it. I see it kind of as a battle that, I mean, I still fight at times, but I've largely won those little battles. And I think that's really beautiful. Again, I'm talking about stepping into the suffering. Like it's really beautiful, all the things that I've suffered through and what it's brought me to. So I just see it more as a victory, I think,
Mhm.
than something that is a label. I mean, I granted, I think the label is there, but it doesn't have to hold us down. I think just trying not to dwell on those things, but again, seeing what can be brought from them, what good can come from them, how can I tackle this, is the perspective that I really try to have with it all, and just focusing on the good things that have come. I mean, I have so many things to look forward to. We're about to adopt. We're just waiting. We're in the process of adopting round two.
Oh, wow.
um, just again, like the things that God is doing in my life from infertility, it's not stopping. Like there's just, he just keeps on bringing these beautiful things,
Mhm.
and it's just trying to focus more on that.
Yeah. So focusing more on maybe some of those, the growth and the gifts and that sort of thing that are kind of coming from it.
Like infertility has been a great challenge, it still is, but look what I'm doing with it,
Mhm.
kind of attitude, if
Yeah.
possible. Again, that's hard to do,
It,
but it is possible.
yeah. Yeah. So like you said earlier, it's kind of it's a daily thing. I mean, all of this I think is a daily process and mindset that we have to have with that.
Yeah.
So yeah. So a couple more questions here. So this one kind of comes back to about like knowing when to like stop treatment. And we got this question quite a few times. And more of it kind of comes to that discerning your next steps. Whatever those next steps are, stopping treatment, adapting, childless not by choice. What would you kind of share with those who are kind of in that step of what are my next I don't know what to do. What are my next steps? And you definitely had that too, Mary, where you guys got to a point where obviously you decided, okay, I'm unable to have children at this point and we're going to adopt. So what can you kind of tell those who are kind of feeling that way today?
Well, a couple of different things. So as far as treatment goes, I know there's a lot of different options that we have. For example, go the fertility awareness route. You can also go to the artificial reproductive technologies route, which has like a bunch of different options. I know. I assume that might be what some people are thinking of when you're talking about treatments, when to stop. My husband and I honestly never considered artificial reproductive technologies, and I have several reasons, which I can't get into all. Again, for me, it was just like, so the desire for the baby is a very good thing and it should be there. But I kind of put it on like, I don't ever want it to be my ultimate goal to where the other things start to, so I all like, my relationship with God is first, my relationship with my husband is second. And I felt like going beyond the natural way that is designed, was really stepping too far into that. And so we never had a design again. And I feel like had I focused too much time on those things, I really wouldn't have found all these other gifts, because it's such a, I mean, it's a grueling emotional process, even extended beyond infertility. Just I'm talking about those other treatments. So I focused on the underlying, and the other reason is a health reason is because I understood the seriousness of my condition, the disease, the scar tissue, et cetera, and that I really needed to tackle that underlying issue which the artificial treatments tend to do. And I had a lot of symptoms as well. So I focused on getting my body healthy as best as I possibly could, which made me more likely to achieve a pregnancy anyway. But it also it improved my symptoms and it allowed me to focus on those other things. That's kind of how I see that. Again, it's a journey, but as far as treatments go, I see treatments as addressing underlying issues and really focusing on health. That's how I view treatments. I think that's honestly the healthy way is to be able to do that and focus on like the whole person
Mhm.
versus the other route. Yeah.
And what would you say though if someone's trying to decide to go a different route, right? You know, everyone everyone has a different diagnosis, everyone has a different
Yeah.
comfort level with things. So you know, if someone that's like, I'm trying to stop treatment, like we've been trying for a long, long time. I'm just having this person's kind of sharing, I'm having a tough time knowing when do I stop? Like when should I say we need to do it no longer? You know, what would you say to them that they're kind of struggling with that, right? Like there's this balance of wanting to keep going, but they're kind of feeling maybe they should stop. How do they kind of discern those next steps?
Well, by treatment, do you mean like I'm just trying to understand the difference. So
Oh,
when I think of treatment, I think of addressing the underlying issue as a health thing. So that's
oh,
really
okay.
I don't know if compartmentalize is the right way, but especially for my own clients. So like when working with my infertility clients, I like to make the focus on health again because there's always going to be improvements in the health area, whether it's mental health or physical health, and we're addressing the underlying issue. So when we're focused on our health, like as far as treatment stopping, like we're just trying to get healthy.
I see
So
what
I,
you're saying.
so beyond that, I'm never going to take it there because that's what I think is most healthiest to focus on the underlying issues to get me my healthiest.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Does
So
that
I
make
was,
sense?
yeah, and I think maybe I was using the wrong word then. So maybe just this person's maybe thinking about just kind of being done even trying to have kids. Maybe that's the better way I should say that, you know. So what would you kind of say for them where I think there's that point of they're kind of grieving? Should we just should we let that dream go? Should we let the dream of having our children on our own? How do we let that go? I guess, you know, surrendering
Yeah.
to that. That's maybe
Yeah.
what I should have said.
Again, yeah, I think it goes back to our other conversation about like a baby, unless we have a hysterectomy or menopause happens, like a baby could come. So as far as like, I think health is the most important and just, and stepping into that suffering, I think only the person can answer that question. I can't answer it for them. And
Hmm.
it's going to be individual because everybody is so unique. So
Yeah.
I think and what's best is again just to step into that suffering and say, God, what are you calling me to do now? What are you calling me to do with this? And really trying to find like whatever happens and loving yourself there, loving the way that you're created.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's just the best way I can answer the question, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and individually, and I think, you know, it's an exhausting experience, right? No matter which route you go, no matter what medical service you know you decide to do, it's just really kind of exhausting.
Absolutely.
So that's maybe where is that something that people would you encourage them that even for you and your husband, you know, you stopped having surgeries, you know, you guys got to that point. So for someone that is kind of exhausted and they're just like, I don't know what to do next, um what would you encourage them to do as far as just maybe not rushing into the next thing, right? Like allowing their body and God to like talk to them. Does that make sense? Kind of what I'm saying. Instead of, I feel it's so easy when we're doing treatments to just keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going,
Right.
right? Instead of maybe stopping to assess, okay, how am I really doing? How am I really feeling? How's my emotional health? Um, so I mean, is that kind of what you guys experienced where you were like, all right, we're going to we may still be able to do it naturally, but we want to start pursuing adoption. I think that's where a lot of people have
Oh, yeah.
questions of maybe still holding on to that dream of having a natural pregnancy, but still deciding, I
That's
want a
right.
child, should we do adoption?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So, I mean, I still had the struggle going forward into adoption. Adoption was really hard for me. My husband was there well before I was, but for me at the time, I felt like moving towards adoption meant I was accepting that I would never have children. And that was the hardest thing for me to get past. And it didn't mean that, but it was just like, okay, this means I'm giving up. And I wasn't ready for that. So it was actually right after what I call my worst day ever, when I had that false positive pregnancy test. I was like, okay, I'm going to choose to love you, Lord. I think you're calling us towards adoption. I'm not there yet, but if you want to get me there, okay, I'm going to give this a certain amount of time. So I did one of those things that we like to do. Like I actually gave myself 3 months. And I'm like, if I'm not pregnant in 3 months, I will move forward with the adoption process. The 3 months really wasn't so much to get pregnant, although we were trying. It was more for me to kind of shift, I think, the way that I was thinking and feeling out of myself and into what God was calling us to do at that point. But it really gave me that time to grieve and to just kind of like move forward, or at least just make the attempt to move forward. And honestly, and I gave God that permission, like, if this is what you're calling us to do, okay. So we continued to try to get pregnant, even starting the adoption process. I mean, and going into it. But that 3 months came and I stuck to my word. And then after that, it's funny because once we let God in and kind of give him that permission to do with us what he wants, he totally moved my heart there for adoption. Totally changed everything over the next year and a half or so. By the time we got matched, I mean, I can tell you, and by the time we welcomed Bella into our house, there was no difference in my mind between adopting a child and having one. I mean, other than not experiencing a pregnancy itself, like that's something I'll always mourn. But welcoming Bella, and again, this was our individual journey. It might be different for somebody else, but that's what God was calling us to. And if I hadn't really stepped into that and given him that, then I don't know if that would have happened. So yeah, really just being open to, and again, we continue to try that desire we never stopped trying to get pregnant, but the distractions are very helpful. Again, like you were saying, just to sit in that for so long, like I had to take breaks from charting. It was just too much for me. I think maybe that's what you were talking about. I just couldn't put the stuff on the paper. I couldn't make my observation. I had to take breaks here or there. And to just not do my best to not think about it and focus on something else. And that was really helpful to me too. When I was ready, I got back into it. But again, there's that component of health. Like infertility is not a diagnosis. It's a symptom of something else. So that's why I really also like looking at it as a health thing, not just as a I can't conceive thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think kind of like you said, you can still hold on to that, that dream of, you know, for someone that maybe is kind of deciding like, do we continue treatment or do we try adoption? You can still maybe hold on to that dream or that hope that you would have a child naturally, but there are ways maybe you can still continue looking at another option, I guess. And I feel that way too, where it was like, either we do this or we do this. Like it was never for me either, where I felt like I could maybe still be trying, and then, okay, maybe you do look into adoption.
Right.
You know, I think that's maybe what this question is kind of more about is,
gotcha. Okay.
You know, like we can still be trying maybe multiple options, if we're still
absolutely
kind of the outcome. Yeah.
Definitely.
So I think another question here we've kind of got, because we kind of had a lot. Man, our time's gone by fast. One of the questions I think was really, let me see here, this one here. I think this is a really important one, is how were you able to live through infertility? So like fully like enjoying life, you know, having that, you know, none of us like where we're at, but still being able to be content and having joy and living through that. Like what would you share with someone that's feeling that way today?
Yeah. Well, I think, again, growing with my husband and really finding that marriage relationship and growing in intimacy in that way, and the ways outside of sex, you know, in the bedroom itself has been very helpful. Like I said, and I'm just being honest, what has been the most challenging, like I've found peace with the fact that I will probably never conceive. I'm at peace with God, but it's been very difficult for me to be around other women, a lot. Other people who are fertile and maybe don't know how to be sensitive about that. My friends have so many kids, so
Yeah.
many. And it's very hard. I mean, it's not as hard now, but there are still times when it's very simply be around them. So that is a challenge. That's a real big challenge for me, and something that only time I think will heal. And also starting conversations, which is what I try to do a lot on Taking Back the Terms, is bring up these difficult things to talk about. If it's possible, have conversations with the people that make you feel uncomfortable. Maybe that's not possible directly, but the people that are closest to us, that is possible. And so it's really working towards that. But again, I just cannot highlight enough how discovering the gifts God has given me has been transformative in being infertile, because I don't feel broken so much. I don't feel like I'm lacking compared to other people so much, because I see how much God has given me. And it's understanding ourselves it's getting to know us for who we really are. That's what infertility has done for me. I mean, it's brought so much good, because it's forced me to look at these other areas of my life. So it doesn't feel like I mean, it is awful, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's still painful, but it doesn't, I don't feel like it holds me back so much, because I have found what God has called me to do. And part of that is being a mother to my adopted daughter, and God willing, another adopted child. But there's so much more than that. So much more than that. So that's really healing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. No, that's great, Marian. I just really appreciate you taking the time to visit with us and just candidly share your story and what you've experienced, and how your life has been transformed. You know, how you were here and now you're here, and because that experience, you know, we were able to have you here today and visit with us. I'm going to do a couple of rapid fire questions to close out, just because these are kind of some fun ones. So what one word, phrase, or Bible verse that brings you hope and encouragement, what would you share?
I love this one. I wrote it down. Romans 5:3-4. Okay, but we even boast of our afflictions, knowing that affliction produces endurance, and endurance, proven character, and proven character, hope, and hope does not disappoint.
Awesome.
I mean, that is what keeps me going.
Oh, good. And what's your favorite way to distress or clear your mind?
It's funny. You mean like besides watching TV?
Oh, well, if that's what it is, then great, watching TV.
No, seriously, that's really what it is. I mean, I love to say that I love to exercise. I'm just really bad at it. So honestly, yeah, the way I de-stress and relax, watching TV or a good movie.
Oh, awesome. Okay, perfect. And then what's maybe your favorite song to worship, dance, relax, or jam out to?
Okay, well, I mean, through the whole experience of infertility, I love this one Hillsong song called Oceans. You familiar?
Oh, yep.
Where feet may fail or something. So that's like my go-to song, but you know, I love hip hop. So that's otherwise, I just love that kind of music. But I will tell you, I recently found an app, because not all of it is clean and like, you know, great content. There's called The Heat, and it only plays, you can download it on your phone, and they only play like positive, uplifting hip hop and rap music. So
I've never.
a little nugget of wisdom for you.
Yeah,
if you can call that wisdom.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up. No, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
And I do want to, as we close out here too, we had someone here that asked a question.
Somebody asked what the app was called. The Heat. HEAT.
Oh, there it is. Heat. The Heat.
The Heat.
Okay. Oh, perfect. There we go.
There you go.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. We had somebody who asked the question, I think, here about kind of when to stop treatment. They had shared they've been trying for 5 years and didn't know when to surrender. So I think that we want to give away to you. So I don't have your name here, but I think Kelsey does. We are going to give away. Mary had recommended Jen Fulweiler. Okay, her book is called Blue Flame.
Your Blue Flame.
Oh, sorry, what was that?
Your Blue Flame.
Oh, yes, Your Blue Flame. And that was Mary's pick. And so we are going to mail that book to you. So I think, Kelsey, if you have her information or can get her email address, we are going to mail that book to you. That's Mary's. It looks awesome. Like, I can't wait to read it too. So I think that's great. That's great.
That's really going to help you discover those gifts. That's why I put that in there, because I heard her speak. And
Oh,
it was
okay.
after hearing her speak about your blue flame that I really started to dig into, like, what are my gifts?
Mm.
So book's really going to help you find those.
Oh, great. Oh, so that'll be just even more to keep that conversation going. So
Yes.
that'll be awesome. Well, you guys, let's go ahead. I think in the bottom you can share some reactions. Let's give Mary some lots of love. Clap your hands, give her some hearts, you guys. Just thank you so much, Mary, for spending your time with us this morning. I know we had a question here. This will what is it here? This will be shared post the event. We'll have it live. And then the other thing, we do have some free resources, Mary. We have a link in the chat for you guys to access. Mary had a free resource. You can actually get all of the speakers' free resources at that link. And let us know, Mary, how can people find you?
So I'm at Taking Back the Terms on Instagram and Facebook. I also have a website, marygbruno.com, where you have access to everything, even music. More to come soon, hopefully. Also, fan base is FABMBASE. And that's on Instagram and Facebook as well. We're coming out with a website soon. We're really excited about it. Also, I'm writing my first book on suffering and infertility. It's really a memoir of everything I kind of explained, plus a lot more detailed. So if you follow me on Instagram, I will, make a lot of announcements for when that's coming out.